just in case you missed it, I might have failed to hit the button. I've gone live here in a bit of a frenzy to get on here live. Here's a live shot of Israel this morning. We're going to talk about why this matters to you today. See the smoke clearing just a little bit there? Israel has begun to respond. A full declaration of war yesterday. This is not a small issue. War might be a racket, but it certainly does affect you in ways you might not have yet considered. Why does this war in Israel matter for you in the here and now? We'll get to that in a minute. First of all, let's look at some updates. Israel orders a complete siege of Gaza. That means they want to cut off food, water, electricity. And Hamas continues to fire back. Now, there's really no way for Hamas, as it is, to win any kind of ongoing conflict here. And the circumstances as to how this began are, let's just say, I'm not convinced that the official narrative is all that true. Let's look at, here's a clip, of course, just as to let you know these will contain some graphic, not graphic, but it may be distressing. We'll let you know. It's not that severe here, but this is kids, young folks, I guess adults, not just kids, at an international festival. These are ravers, and this is what happened to them. I'm going to kill the music there because there's nothing happening in the audio that's all that important here. What is important, what is interesting is, as you see, look at that. So the invasion came by water, it came by air, and it came by land. And the way they came by air was paragliders. They came in on paragliders. And it seems that this particular festival, about 12 miles from the border, is what they had their eyes on. And you can see them. What happens here, someone on the camera caught them coming in. People are oblivious, getting the groove on. And then it turns into this, running for their lives. All right, shooting, kidnapping, whoever was in their path. You can see it looks kind of like there was a Burning Man festival going on there on the Israel side of the border. And then right here is a picture of someone that we're told was taken hostage. No way to know for sure, but that's, and if that's the case, well, that's horrifying. And you see this guy here. They've some other guys have got him, got his wrists cuffed together. Now it's hard to tell who's who, right? This is a guerrilla warfare. This is not the kind of warfare that we think of when we think of war going down, but this is how it's been in the Middle East forever. So there's just some shots of the area. That's enough of that. And then there was this clip as well. These are the major clips from yesterday.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Another
Allahu Akbar!
cries of Allahu Akbar. God is great. It's a different God, but nonetheless, they've taken a female hostage here, apparently. So they're stuffing her into the Jeep. That's that clip. And the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, this is Gilad Erdan. Folks, this is what's interesting about this. There seems to have been a narrative ready to go. I'm not saying that I know what happened. I'm not saying I'm not saying what didn't happen or did happen. It's just interesting. Listen to the language.
This is Israel's 9/11. This is Israel's 9/11, and Israel will do everything to bring our sons and daughters back home.
This is yesterday.
These images are horrifying. They are hard to see, and they are impossible to fully internalize. But I'm showing you all of this for a reason. Today, many members of the international community are supporting Israel, yes. But if history has taught us anything, we know that tomorrow that may not be the case.
He goes on here. I don't want to play the whole thing because we got to get in and out of here fast this morning. But we're going to be covering this for you as it unfolds. We're not going to leave this one on the back burner. We're going to keep you updated on this one daily because this might be the biggest story that we have for you for a long time. It might be one of the biggest stories we've ever attempted to cover for you here at Armor of Truth because of the implications. And because this deals directly in Bible prophecy, this is our wheelhouse. This is what we're here for. This is Netanyahu. He was just making a statement yesterday. Don't need to hear that. Here's another Israeli resident claiming that Hamas terrorists are bragging about shooting
at least 600 people killed in the attacks by Hamas terrorists.
That's gone up to over 700 at this point. I'll read some. The reason I brought that up is because there are a lot of pictures of people who've been taken hostage. A lot of there is an outpouring of requests, implications of sympathy for Israel here at this time, and some of it, at least some of it, seems a bit suspicious. Let me get this light here so everything's. There we go. Okay, so let's skip over him for now. Here is an update from earlier, just a bit ago. So this is actually from early...
All right, we begin with this. Fox News alert, explosions and sirens heard in Jerusalem. Moments ago, you just saw the videos. Long-range missiles are fired towards the central part of the country. Our own Trey Yinks just posted a video of himself amidst the chaos.
Now, that would have been earlier in Israel, just before sunrise, a pre-dawn attack. So there is response. Here's Israel's Twitter feed. We are at war. We will protect our citizens. We will not give in to terror. We will make sure that those who harm innocents pay a heavy price. Now, we're not here to make any claims about what we think is actually happening here, but the similarities, the harmony with the same message that came before and then after the 9/11 are very, very interesting. And what do we know about 9/11 today? At least what we can say here on YouTube. Well, we know that whatever the cause of it, the result of it was very clear. An ongoing global war on terror. A very profitable war on terror. Some dictators who needed to be removed probably were removed, but all of it based on a completely false premise of WMD and, of course, the attacks of 9/11, which we can't. Although it seems like Redacted is able to talk about 9/11 all they like. I don't know what that actually means, but we'll leave that there for now. Netanyahu, this is yesterday, same thing. He's just same statement he made, declaration of war. The U.S. is moving military ships around. Their goal, from what I can find out so far, is they just want to make sure that any fighting that pops off there is contained to that area. So they're kind of encircling the region to make sure that, I guess, other heavier forces don't come in from somewhere else to back up Hamas. They want to make sure. They're going to do what the U.S. does. They're going to make sure that Israel doesn't fall behind in this conflict. Let's see. An official at the U.S. National Security Council told Al Jazeera, we confirmed the death of several American citizens due to the attacks. Now, this report I have for you here comes from a source that I trust. It's not mainstream. I wouldn't trust it implicitly, but it's more reliable than mainstream. Israeli military reports that approximately 1,000 Palestinian fighters were involved in the attacks that started on what would have been Saturday morning for us. An official at the U.S. National Security Council told Al Jazeera, once again, this is the death of several American citizens. That one was repeated. Dan Crenshaw, Congressman Dan, the man Crenshaw, has an interesting tweet here. He says, this is not going to be a fleeting conflict. It looks like it will be the war to end all wars. It's different this time, and it needs to be clear to Hamas and the Iranian Ayatollah and all their other proxies that this was a severe miscalculation. They need to be defeated. That's Dan Crenshaw. Israeli Defense Force reports at least 100,000 Israeli reservists have reported for active duty, with hundreds of thousands of additional reservists available to be called up if the need arises. Hamas has put out a statement saying you can move all the American aircraft carriers around you want. That doesn't scare us. And the Biden administration doesn't scare us. Is that shocking to anyone? And in fact, Hamas threatening the U.S., threatening the Biden administration, saying the Biden administration must realize the consequences of this step. Now, that's an empty threat, we know, but nonetheless, there it is. It could have consequences in this country, right? People are not happy about what's going on, and there's not just one side to this, right? Clearly. In the Western media, it's completely pro-Israel. In other places, well, let's look at this here. Here's some Palestinian supporters in Sydney yesterday. Cries of Allahu Akbar. Cries of Allahu Akbar in Western nations, in Western areas. And that's not isolated. It's in a lot of places right now. Here's some Jim Ferguson reporting from the UK. There were some demonstrations, pro-Palestine demonstrations in New York yesterday, as well as Jim Ferguson reporting from the UK.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Down, down Israel! Down, down Israel! Down, down Israel!
So there is a strong Muslim contingent just about wherever you look today. Very interesting. The Israel-Palestine conflict it's complex and deeply rooted struggle with a long history. The understanding and interpretation of this conflict's history really depends on your perspective. It really comes down to the perspective of the observer, right? But now Christians have a specific stake in this. We'll get to that. The situation is very complex. So I would advise to be very careful about feeling drawn to one side or the other, in an emotional way. We can think through this. We can think through the right response. But it's complex. The historical roots here are deep. The narratives are different. It just depends on who you talk to. Many attempts over the years have been made to resolve this conflict, but a comprehensive and lasting solution has never been found. There is a time for war. No question about that. There's a time for every purpose. But they invaded in paragliders. I thought that was really interesting because the narrative goes like this. We couldn't have imagined such an invasion. We couldn't have, our minds weren't creative enough to imagine. people flying over the border in low power aircraft, not fixed wing aircraft. We couldn't have imagined people coming around the fence through the water. We couldn't have imagined. Really? Does that sound familiar? Do you remember Condoleezza Rice after 9/11 saying, this was a failure of imagination. We just couldn't imagine planes crashing into buildings. Well, it just turns out that was a lie, because they had talked about that very thing just months before, the possibility of it. There was a program called Operation Northwoods where the CIA ran that very kind of operation. What would it look like? How easy would it be to get a plane and do this with it? So you can't trust most of what you hear. How they couldn't have imagined or planned for such an event. So the media is decidedly anti-Palestine, denouncing any show of support for Palestine as inherently wrong. It's wrong think, right? Regardless of nuance or deeper context. There's a lot of hostage stories, pictures. You heard the Israeli ambassador to the UN there a minute ago. How could the most locked down and singularly secure patch of land on this earth be surprised and overwhelmed by armed forces 30 to 50 years behind in military capability? Maybe more like 20 to 30 years behind. Maybe that's a stretch, but they're behind. Lots of times it's characterized like it's slingshots versus missiles. It seems the narrative, complete with talking points, was ready to go before the attack. Now everybody's going to have an opinion, their own special theory, their own hot take. So be very careful. Be very careful with your favorite YouTubers and your favorite Rumble speakers and Odyssey speakers or favorite podcasters. Be very careful right now. They're going to be asking, they're going to be speculating on, why did it happen now? Right? Saudi Arabia and Israel have been in talks to have some economic partnerships together for a good while now. Some people say that that upset, this block of Islamists over here. So maybe that was, you don't really know. This has been going on for millennia. Who's actually behind it? They're going to give you their ideas of who's actually behind it. They're going to tell you that it's definitely a distraction from this or definitely a distraction from that. And it may be. But the truth is, this thing could get big. It could turn into a global affair fast. This looks like we've got multiple spots on the earth now where wars have popped off. Depends on how sustained this is. It shouldn't be very sustained at all. However, if it is a false flag, I'll just throw it out there. I'm going to risk it. If that's what it was, it's probably going to drag on for a long time. But it's more than clear that the ones who currently have their hands on the levers that control information and sentiments around the world, they all want global war. They've done nothing but foment armed conflict for years now. And I do mean the Biden administration. You need to know that this could get big fast as leaders, media, and demagogues rally their faithful into order. With many more people in other countries, the extreme dangers here become obvious. It's back to 1990s, early 2000s style terrorism. That's the idea. Major corporations are going to be going to war, right? For causes and ideals. You're going to hear people telling you need to be on this side, you need to be saying this. Most importantly, they go to war for profit because multiple money-making war machines are at work. They're churning as we speak. Corporate entities are doing battle, and they're all getting richer, doing the horror and the slaughter. This is a report. This is from John Rappaport's words yesterday. I'm sharing with you here. It is the war machine, in other words. Rappaport also said, he shared the words of Major General Smedley Butler, who wrote 90 years ago, "War is a racket." Butler, the most decorated Marine in history, 4 years after his retirement from military service, wrote, "War is just a racket." A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of people. Only a small inside group knows what's really going on. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the people, the masses. Butler said, I spent 33 years and 4 months in active service as a member of our country's most agile military force, the Marine Corps. I served in all commissioned ranks from a second lieutenant to a major general, and during that period I spent most of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer for crony capitalism. Thus, I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers and in 1909 and through 1912. Butler said, I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916, and during those years I had, as the boys in the back room would say, a swell racket. I was rewarded with honors, medals, promotions. Looking back on it, I feel I might have given Al Capone a few hints. This is General Smedley Butler after his retirement. The best he could do was to operate his racket in 3 city districts. We Marines operate on 3 continents. No matter what people write, no matter what people say, keep this in mind as we move forward daily through this new war. Why does it matter? 14 to 15 million people in the world are Jews. That's less than 0.2%. However, the Muslim population is 24% of the world. That's almost 2 billion people. Christians, at last check, are 32% of the world population at 2.6 billion. Now that breaks down to about 1.3 billion Roman Catholics and about a billion or so Protestants. So, it gets, what do you really believe about this issue as a Roman Catholic? It's hard to know. A lot of Roman Catholics seem to go with the flow of the popular politics, but you've got what is that? That's about 3.5 billion. You're 40% of the world's population there. This is a big deal. U.S. has been and will continue to be Israel's military guardian. That's the way it is. It appears that the reason Hamas would want to attack right now, possibly, is because, as we said earlier, the reports of Saudi Arabia and Israel having talks. There are many things. I don't want to speculate on why it happened. It has happened. All right. Just be careful in assuming that you have a good grasp on the dogmatic details and the cultural dynamics of what's happening in the region. On one hand, it's far more complicated than any one person could know. On the other hand, it's a very simple explanation. And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and men's hearts love the darkness rather than the light because their deeds are evil. And they don't want their deeds to be found out. In those eternal words of God, in that unchanging truth lies what's true and what our response must be. Now, for the rest of this, we'll come back to you later and help you understand what is the Israel-Palestine conflict, who is Hamas. Also, Hezbollah is going to become a part of this conflict here, this war, soon. We want you to understand the background of all of this so you'll have a grasp. You'll know how to talk about it intelligently when people bring it up. You won't have to guess. You won't have to read other people's tweets. You'll know. Here's the background. You can make up your own mind, and we'll look at it through the lens of the biblical worldview, because that's the one that's true. All right, my friends, God bless you. We'll see you again here real soon. Didn't mean to hit the applause. Let's go out with this. Yeah, that right there.
The hammer comes down and beats you over the head for the rest of your life with a big national security stick. And so that people learn to duck their head and not speak up. Because bad idea now.
This is the emergency.